Why don't you, I just want to touch this in the heart of this, again, short sermonette. It's a small part of, are you a believer? Are you a disciple? And you are a Christian? And the heartbeat behind this, again, is what is the church producing? What is the church producing? What is, as someone comes in and becomes a true believer, they come into this organism, what is coming out on the conveyor belt? What is the local church and the corporate church producing in its mandates? In its mandates. It is a heart pain if someone comes into this church and you are underneath the teaching and the ministry of this word, and there's no growth. There's no movement within that spiritual life. That hurts me deeply, and I ask God, what can I do to change so that it can affect that life where they don't stay as just a believer. God, in saving you and I, wants to move you through the stages of your Christian life. He wants you to move from a true believer to becoming a disciple, and then culminating in becoming a Christian. John calls it little children, young men, fathers. So keep that in your mind's eye in terms of your walk before God, that He doesn't want you and I to stay as just believers or little children. He wants to move us in the stages of development where at the end of the conveyor belt, we have become true fathers in Him. I have 4 girls. If they were to stay little babies, something's wrong. They should be growing. They should be moving from milk into meat. Abraham threw a great feast when his son Isaac no longer was sucking on the breast of Sarah. And he began to eat meat, strong meat of God's Word. And the Bible says that his brother Ishmael began to then war with him. Ishmael speaks of your flesh, that the flesh will let you drink baby milk and pablum, and there will be very little resistance of the flesh man towards that spiritual place. It will let you drink the milk and the pablum. Not going to harass you too much. Why? Because little babies have very little threat. But the Bible says when Isaac began to eat meat, the flesh rose up and began to attack Isaac, the spirit. You wonder why maybe you're going through warfare. Is because there is a war on the inside. Spiritual man versus fleshly man. Abraham, the father of our faith, God who is the Father, throws a feast when you and I move from milk and we begin to eat the meat of God's Word. So my heart cry is, since you are here and you call this place home. Oh, one of you. I said, that's the place to say amen. Hey, wake her up already. She's already sleeping on me. You call this place home. Amen. Almost all of you call this place home. Amen. Then I have a responsibility to endeavor to be a part of the process, and I take it very seriously. Did you know when I see Jesus, He's going to ask me about you? He said, be not many teachers or instructors, for you will encounter a greater judgment. That He will bring you to me and say, how did you do? Did you provide, listen, opportunity? I cannot make you grow. I can't do that. Only you, God's Spirit and His Word, collaborating together can move you and I down the process through His grace. That's why God says, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Work out your salvation. So I just want to touch this a minute, and let's turn real quick to James chapter 2. And let me just get some of this out of my spirit. And like I mentioned, if you don't like this, maybe you'll like the real sermon. And those of you that are visiting, we give you 2 sermons for the price of 1. James chapter 2. Verse 19. Now, we've read this. I just want to catch you up quickly. James, the half-brother of Jesus, you know his nickname was Camel Knees because after he saw the risen Christ, he became an ardent prayer warrior. And so they called him, tradition says, Camel Knees because of the heavy scabs on his knees. Verse 19, tell me if you have it. Now James says you believe. Notice that word believe. If you don't and you haven't circled it, it's pisteuo. Pisteuo. So circle believe. He said you believe, pisteuo, that there is one God. He said, well, you do well, but the demons also pisteuo, believe, and notice they tremble. So now many Christians, quote, believe in Christ. Pisteuo means to have a conviction. It means to have a conviction. It means that yes, I believe that. I have a mental assent. Yes, that's true. I believe there is one God. Pisteuo, I believe in Jesus Christ. The same word that James says that demons believe. Now let me ask you, are demons going to heaven? So a pisteuo belief in Christ will not get you into heaven. So when you have a continent of, quote, people that say, I believe in God, well, demons do too. It's important for you in terms of sharing your faith in love that you have a few scriptures in your pocket to give a reason and account for the hope of glory that lies in you. When they say, I believe in God, then gently come with the truth of James 2:19. But yes, brother, even the demons believe, and they're not going to heaven. Now, just again, remember, belief alone isn't sufficient. A mental assent to truth isn't alone. The demons believe. They even tremble. Okay, now John 3:16, the first scripture that I memorized when my mother took me to a little tiny Baptist church when I was 8 years old and got saved at that little Baptist church. This was the verse that preacher shared with me. And as you turn to John 3:16, I want to say that I am indebted to the local church. You can get mad at her all you want to. You can say things about your local church and her all you want to. You can tell me how much you've been offended and how much you have been harassed and all of the crummy things that happen in a local church. I'm here to tell you I've sat there where you have sat. Now I'm up here and I'm telling you, listen, it's worse up here than it is there. So don't cry to me about someone telling you your blouse is too low, sweetie. Don't cry and tell me you're upset because someone didn't talk to you on Sunday. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe you need to talk to them. I am indebted to the local church until I leave the planet Earth in spite of her weaknesses, her frailties, and her faults. Why? Because I got saved in her. And yes, you have weak people and weak leaders, and all of us are prone. Jesus is the only one that's 100%. So if you're expecting 100%, there's only one. His name is Jesus Christ. So I am indebted to her. And I give my allegiance and my life to him and to her. Whether I'm sitting there or whether I am up here, it does not matter in my heart. I can care less. This isn't something I wanted. But all of that to say to you and to I is that I don't know what all of that was to say. Tell me if you have verse 16. Come on, verse 16. For God what? Just loved? Hey, he had to put that in, didn't he? So loved. He not just loves you, beloved. He so loves you. I said he so loves you. He so loves you. He loved you before you even loved him. He always initiates. God initiates all things. God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever what? Circle that word. It's a different Greek word for belief. It's literally ice. Ice. Believe into him. Believe into him should not perish, but have everlasting life. So the contrast I'm endeavoring to bring there is this particular Greek, in English, two words, believing into him, is more than pistuio. It is ice. It is entering into. It is coming into. It's not just a mental assent, a belief, a conviction. It's more than that. Do you believe that there is a taste of Texas off of I-10? Three of you. I got to wake you up today. Must have been a long weekend. Do you believe there's a taste of Texas on I-10? Yes. Now, is there a taste of Texas? Yes, there is. But in terms of the understanding of this and becoming a true believer, you have to enter into the taste of Texas. It's not enough just to know it's there and to believe God is there and I believe in Jesus. This Greek word means you have to enter into Jesus Christ. Then when that happens, listen, you now have become born again. Begotten from above. It means your dead human spirits, what the Bible says, dormant human spirit, has now been awakened unto God. You now have moved from the family and the kingdom of darkness to the kingdom of light. You now no longer are an orphan. You now are a son and you are a daughter of the Most High. You now have a spiritual family that should become closer than your blood kin. Now, you can't stay as a believer. That isn't enough. Yes, you're going to heaven, but the issue is now maturation. Maturation. So now, why don't you do I'll read it to you, Matthew 28:19. Jesus said, go into all of the nations and make what, beloved? Make disciples. Make disciples of all nations. So again, he's not settling just for believers. He wants to grow you and I. Now, I've mentioned just in terms of catching you up, a disciple we have found out in Luke 14:26 has an unrivaled love for Christ. What is a disciple? He says, my disciple will love me more than father, mother, son, daughter, boyfriend, girlfriend, athletics, money, business, everything in your life. If you want to be a disciple who's listening. It's an unrivaled love to him. You actually can have a spiritual litmus test and put it in the lives of people to find out, is he an unrivaled love? What's the first thoughts you have when you awake? Is it the stock market? What's the first thought that you have? Is there more of a love for a boyfriend and a girlfriend than for him? He says, my disciples will love me. There will be an unrivaled love. There won't be any competition. I said there won't be any competition. I love Tina, 33 years. Take a bullet. I love my 4 kids. Get run over by a bus for them, no problem. But Jesus Christ, He's the love of my life. I'm never lonely. I'm never alone. I never struggle with being alone. He's one, Lord, I love you. I'm going to sleep. Wake me up in the morning or earlier, because your spirit never sleeps, if you need me to war. We've mentioned willing to give up everything to follow Him. Luke 14:33. Must bear your cross. Jesus said, Luke 14:27, if you want to be my disciple, you must take up your cross and bear your cross, He said. Listen, beloved, the victorious Christian life isn't medicating your pain. Is it medicating your sorrow or your depression? It's not having the threat of a lie detector to make sure my behavior is upright. One individual actually would go to a lie detector for his family to endeavor to bring his behavior as a threat to live his life before God. That's not the victorious Christian life. Is to have all of these external areas so that my behavior before Him doesn't move left or right. That's the work of God's Holy Spirit. And that if I got to have all of these arsenals to keep me, that's a form of bondage. The victorious Christian life is that He becomes so strong in my life. I don't need a lie detector to make sure I'm not sleeping with someone. Might be too early for us this morning. Jesus said, if you want to be my disciple, Luke 14:27, you have to come after me, the law of pursuit and priority. And then He said, Luke 14:28, you must count the cost. Now, who's still listening? Your decision, like Martin and his sweet wife about a month ago, when he came up and gave his life, I can tell there had been a counting of the cost a few weeks before. As I released salvation, the gift of salvation, and I knew he was an unsaved man, I knew, though, that his character would count the cost first. Because he's the kind of man that if he says yes to Jesus Christ, that means he's all in. That's the way it should be. That the Lord wants all in saints. Did a message in my bad days. It was, I say bad days, you know, when Jesus got on that donkey, it was not a full, translations called it an ass. It wasn't a full donkey, and it wasn't a full baby, whatever that is. What is it? Mule. And I called it half-ass saints. Are you awake for that? You're going to leave the church because I said that. King James called it an ass. He rode on the back of an ass, and it was not a full-grown carrier that carried his presence. That woke some of you up. And so I called it half-ass saints that haven't decided, are you all the way in or not? Listen, we've mentioned, if Jesus is God, King of kings, Lord of lords, then get all the way in. If He's not, go out here and serve Baal, smoke it, lick it, bite it, chase it, touch it, do all of that, but pick your God and do it with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength. I got no help from some of you today on that. It is not based, that decision, on just emotion. That won't help you when your emotions are gone. One of the slams against Pentecostals, charismatic, you're so emotional. Well, God's made emotions, and I do get excited about God, but I don't live on emotions. I said I don't live on them. Emotions come and go. Feelings come and go. Right? So the cost, and contemplating the cost of following him, again, must be weighed out. He said, before you go to war, count up your army. Before you build that tower, see if you have enough money to finish the tower. One of the largest churches in the earth used to be, I think it's about 300,000 or 400,000, is one of the churches we take you to in Mumbai, India, called New Life Fellowship. At their strength, they were at about 600,000 until a church split sawed that in half or in thirds. But one of many of the most dramatic things about that work is their level of sacrifice and service is unparalleled. And a fearlessness to die for him. And I asked the leaders there, how do you get people to serve with such fiery passion and longevity? He said the cost has already been counted before they came into this church. That they weighed the cost of ultimately giving their life to Jesus Christ, losing, listen, all family. When you break away from Hinduism, you are losing family. You are risking one woman, young woman, 17. True story. Shared this with her parents. I am converting to Jesus Christ. They threw her off a 17-story flat. Died. They weigh the cost of salvation, and when they come in, it is easy for them to serve God. They've already weighed it out. The service is nothing. It is the loss of family, the loss of inheritance, potentially the loss of life for them. So when they come into the local house, the cost has already been weighed. And so now there is a mighty movement of such passionate evangelism and servant leadership that overtakes many of the cities in India to this day. Has spread all over the world, Canada, Oman, Dubai, all over the place because of counting the cost. Now, taking too long with this, but I want to share with you an element today of a disciple. How many want to be a disciple? John 13, 34, 35, a new command Jesus says, I give to you. Please listen, he said, I want you to love one another. As I have loved you. So you now, listen, must love one another. Didn't ask, he commanded. You must love one another. By all men will know because of this that you are my disciples if you love one another. Now, I've pastored 3 churches, and some from the other 2 are watching. I want to say I love you. Please don't get upset with me. This congregation is one of the most loving congregations I've ever pastored. That is a commendation to Christ in you and your life and heart before one another as well. And I want to say thank you, because one of the most astounding things people say is that this church is such a loving church. Now I want to push you, if you allow me, a little further. Jesus said you must love one another, agape. That was the love he has for you and I. Self-sacrificial, willing, desirous to show that love whereby others know that we are his disciples. Listen now. Personalities, attitudes, dislikes of people are irrelevant to the command of loving one another. You have no option just because she's black. You have no option because she's white. You have no option because they're beautiful, they're ugly, they're short, they're tall. You have no option of the mandate of loving one another because of certain dislikes or attitudes you might face within this church. Because you don't like how they looked at you does not bear any weight on the command to love one another here. and out there. If you are waiting to find someone that you feel a connection with before you show love, you have missed the command of true discipleship. It has nothing to do whether you hit it off with him or whether you don't hit it off with him. Jesus pushes back hard and says, you even have to have this love for your enemies. You still want to be a Christian? Hey, I said you still want to be a Christian. Has nothing to do with you and I being selective in whom you're going to choose to love, meaning there should be no cliques. Hey, who's listening? Some of you had too much pie this weekend. Who's listening? Speaking from experience. You and I have no choice but to choose to love. You going to let me challenge you this morning? Now listen, watch this. If you encounter an individual, and if your spirit is a little sensitive, you'll begin to sense projections coming out of us in terms of, that's the dominant movement of God is your spirit coming out to people. And maybe you just feel this wall, and so you avoid that individual because of that wall. I want to challenge you and say that should be for you a signal you need to go and love that person in spite of the wall. No one here should be sitting alone, feeling isolated and rejected. You now, going forward, should be looking to find someone who doesn't seem to fit in and bring them into your group. This command, listen, has nothing to do with what you're going to get out of the relationship. Well, I don't want to invest my time and my life because I'm not going to get anything out of it. Jesus says, as I have loved you. What's he getting out of that? For most, not a whole lot. He continued to do it over and over and over and over and over, demonstrating that love. If you want to be his disciple, he will call you and me to have a love without expecting anything in return. I know it's hard. Can you at least put your hands together and say you kind of believe that a little bit today? There was always a cost that Christ paid. Every relationship, there was a pull on him, a cost to him. Mark 5:30, the woman with an issue of blood touched him, the Bible says, and power left him. Always taking something from him. If you base this command on what you're going to get in return, you've missed it already. Don't expect anything in return. Who's listening? And be prepared. You may get a knife in your back. Not only did you extend time, money, resource, you may end up having a few daggers in your back because the Lord wants to see how deep is this calling to discipleship in your life. Oh, aren't you glad you're a Christian? What a friend we have in Jesus. It's a command. It wasn't phileo. Friendship, it was full out, I'm going to do this no matter what. Really good. This is one of the ways to point people to Christ is loving one another. They will know that you're my disciple if you love one another. Okay, that's good enough for that. Amen. Hey, I went longer than the 10 minutes that I promised you. Hey, do you have your bulletin? Why don't you grab that? I'll just go ahead and fly through that. How's that sound? Some of you, and I'm not condemning you, I'm just saying, as I would with anything, Wednesday Bible study, let me just tell you, you missed out on a spectacular Wednesday night Bible study with a tremendous presence of God. Now watch this. Watch this. There's an unsaved man I've been sharing Christ to and putting salt on it as the Lord allows me to. And his son comes here. His son comes here. And he was telling me, his son, he was getting his son up to come to church. This was a week ago. And his son said, I don't want to go today. I'm tired. He's 18. And his dad goes, no, get your fanny up and get to church. So even the unsaved father knows, even not yet for himself, but he knows it's good for his boy. Aren't people funny? And his boy goes, Dad, I can just watch it on YouTube. This is an unsaved man. His dad goes, it's not the same. He said, it's not the same. Now, I'm not condemning you. Some of you are working. Some of you have. I understand it. I'm sharing for wherever the shoe fits. Then put it on. If it doesn't fit you, then don't worry about it. If it does fit you, then put that shoe on, Goldilocks. But even an unsaved man knew that it wasn't the same. So I want to encourage you that if you're able to go ahead and push Ishmael out of the way, tell him he's a loser, and follow Isaac into the things of God.